What would you do if the man you married asked you to share him with your own sister? This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about silence, survival, and the moment everything unraveled. When my husband finally revealed his true desires, I couldn't help but laugh at first. I truly believed he was just joking. How could he possibly be serious? Seated around the kitchen table, we found ourselves enveloped in the warmth of the moment. The hour was late, and the children had long since drifted into slumber upstairs. The dishwasher emitted a soft hum in the background. I had just poured him a glass of wine, an act we hadn't shared in, goodness, perhaps months. He locked his gaze onto mine, piercing through to my very core, and uttered words that sent a shiver through me. A sensation I know I will carry forever. What he requested transcended mere surprise. It was not only unsuitable but utterly unimaginable. And yet, I remained silent. I did not scream, I did not cry, I did not storm out of the room. Do you want to hear what I did? I chuckled gently, with a hint of anxiety, the sort of laugh that escapes when your mind struggles to align with your feelings. I chuckled, for it was far simpler than unraveling at the seams. Yet he insisted, "No, darling, I truly mean it." In that instant, a profound transformation occurred within me. Have you ever experienced one of those nights when the stillness in the room becomes almost deafening? Where the individual sitting opposite you, the one with whom you've shared a bed, constructed a life, and revealed your tears, suddenly seems like a stranger. There I was, nestled in my own kitchen, listening to my husband, the man to whom I had devoted everything, express his desire. And not merely a wish, but one that intricately intertwined with my very being. And my sister, indeed, my sister. What transpired next fills me with a sense of shame. To be honest, I remain perplexed about the reasons behind my agreement. Perhaps it was the countless years spent in the shadows unnoticed. Perhaps it was the void I had been attempting to fill through subtle means, intimate methods, and with a sense of urgency. Perhaps, just perhaps, I found myself too fearful to utter the word no. However, if your intention is to pass judgment on me, this may not be the narrative you seek. This narrative transcends the mere theme of betrayal. It revolves around the sensation of being undesired. It explores the profound sense of isolation that can linger even amidst a crowd. It revolves around a profound emotional hunger, where the mere acknowledgement from another, regardless of their suitability, compels you to accept, simply to experience a flicker of sensation. What began as a single uncomfortable dinner culminated in my sister weeping in my bathroom. As I gazed into my reflection, I found myself pondering the person I had transformed into. And with my husband, the very man who once vowed to safeguard my heart, turning his back on the ruins he helped forge as if it were merely another Tuesday. Before I unveil all the details, and trust me, I will share every last one, take a moment to subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. Here, we present the truth without embellishment. We unveil the unrefined, chaotic, and deeply human narratives that many are hesitant to voice. And if you've ever experienced a sense of invisibility within the confines of your own marriage, have you ever pondered the lengths to which a person might venture, simply to regain that sense of visibility? Perhaps in time you'll come to grasp the reasons behind my affirmative response. Let us commence. Allow me to transport you to a different time. 14 years. That marks the duration of my marriage with Eric. We've crafted a life together, complete with 2 children, a mortgage, soccer matches, PTA gatherings, dinner dates with other couples, the entire narrative. In theory, it's the sort of existence that stirs envy in the hearts of many. Yet, the truth often eludes the confines of paper. The distance remains unshown. How 2 individuals can occupy the same space, yet experience an emotional distance that feels insurmountable. It fails to capture the countless nights I spent perched on the edge of that bed, gazing at his back, pondering whether he still recalled the sensation of touching me with love rather than mere habit. I once radiated vitality. I was the sort of woman who laughed with abandon, danced barefoot in the kitchen, and adorned my lips with red lipstick for no particular occasion. Yet, as time passes, uncertainty lingers. It seems the hue has simply lost its vibrancy over time. Gradually, much like a sunset that lingers indefinitely, it dims softly until you find yourself enveloped in darkness, unaware of the transition that has taken place. At 42, I remain married and steadfast. diligently washing the dishes while he discreetly types away on his phone beneath the table. Eric, my husband, is undeniably successful. He operates a technology firm, navigates the roads in a polished vehicle, and dons a fragrance that leaves an impression on all it encounters. To the outside world, he exudes charm, intelligence, and refinement. In my eyes, he exists as a specter, a man present in body, yet absent in spirit for years. He's the type of husband who recalls birthdays yet seems to overlook the simple act of inquiring about my well-being. He plans to buy me a new phone, yet he hasn't met my gaze across the dinner table since our youngest turned 10. He offers a warm smile to the waitresses and shares light-hearted banter with the mothers during school pickup. Yet within the confines of my home, I am met with silence. Times it can be even more dire. I understand indifference. Yet the most troubling aspect? I cease my requests for additional offerings. At a certain moment, the stillness of silence feels more inviting than the sting of rejection. Next, we have Rachel, my sister. She is 7 years my junior, the type of woman who commands attention the moment she enters a room. She possesses a quiet charm, radiating warmth with ease. Illumination. Complimentary. I have always been the more carefree one among us. She twirled atop the tables as I busied myself with the aftermath. Yet, I found no envy towards her. Not quite. Perhaps I did after all. She took up residence with us a few months back, albeit temporarily, she remarked, following a tumultuous separation. A man she believed would be her future husband vanished from her life after 2 years of shared moments. Her heart lay shattered. As her older sister, I took the actions that any devoted sibling would take. I created room for her, within the confines of our abode, within the cadence of our daily lives. Throughout my journey, it was meant to be a fleeting moment. Our house is, quite simply, a vision of beauty. 3 bedrooms, a meticulously maintained lawn, and warm lighting that casts an inviting glow. It's the sort of abode that exudes the warmth of a joyful family dwelling within its walls, yet it remains merely superficial. A scene reminiscent of an impeccably curated model home. Clean and tidy, devoid of essence. The kitchen lingers with the sweet scent of vanilla candles intertwined with the bitter aroma of burnt coffee. On the walls hang family portraits, each frame showcasing smiling faces, coordinated outfits, and gleaming teeth. Yet, there are moments when I gaze upon them, and they seem to have drifted away from who we are. They seem like unfamiliar faces, a life we were merely pretending to possess. For every cheerful snapshot, there lies a tale of neglected meals, unanswered calls, disputes that remain dormant, simmering in a silent bitterness, and fleeting looks, nuanced expressions. Amidst the connection of Eric and Rachel, it began to reveal itself in subtle instances. The gaze he cast upon her as her laughter filled the air. His sudden willingness to assist whenever she was near. How his gaze held just a moment too long as she entered the room, clad in one of those soft, relaxed t-shirts she favored for her leisurely days at home. Initially, I dismissed it. He was merely showing kindness, I reassured myself. Rachel was in pain, and he was doing his best to create a sense of belonging for her. Isn't that so? Yet my intuition, my instincts whispered an alternate narrative. It invariably happens. The subtle, unsettling sensation nestled deep within, a whisper that all is not as it should be. Yet I chose to overlook it, for to acknowledge it would be to confront a reality I was not prepared to accept. I found myself burdened with an abundance of unanswered questions regarding our marriage. Thus, we engaged in a game of domesticity. I offered a smile at the appropriate moments, ensured Rachel's comfort, maintained Eric's composure. I maintained my composure. From the outside, we appeared to be a family. Yet, beneath the surface, decay festered within the walls, as if termites were gnawing at the very foundation of all I believed I possessed. And in some profound way, I was aware. Just a single spark was all that was needed, a single audacious, dreadful, impulsive spark, to incinerate everything in its path. And Eric, he clutched the match tightly. It unfolded on a Saturday evening. Only the 3 of us, myself, Eric, and Rachel, gathered at the dining table. The children are already nestled in their beds. The house was unusually quiet. Soft melodies floated gently through the air. Soft jazz melodies that Eric often plays to create the perfect ambience, although I was never quite certain of the nature of it. We had just completed our meal, I prepared a delightful chicken piccata. Rachel retrieved the inexpensive bottle of red wine that she cherished. We were content, enveloped in warmth and pleasantly lightheaded, allowing our defenses to fade away. Even if it's just a small amount, we shared a hearty laugh over something Rachel had remarked. It has slipped from my memory entirely. Simply a whimsical and playful notion. Suddenly, Eric reclined in his chair, savoring a slow sip of wine, and remarked, "Isn't it fascinating how liberated some couples have become these days?" Initially, it failed to sink in. I assumed he was referring to emotions, perhaps on a spiritual level. I tilted my head and inquired, "Liberated how?" And then he uttered those words. "Consider those couples who embrace a sense of freedom and trust, unburdened by possessiveness. Those who share with greater openness, with unwavering confidence, with affection, embracing a mindset that welcomes diverse perspectives. Polyamory, that kind of arrangement." He uttered it with such nonchalance, utterly seamless, as if he were remarking on the state of the weather, as we were just discussing a podcast. Not whatever this was evolving into. My fingers instinctively clenched the stem of my wine glass. Rachel let out a genuine, innocent giggle and rolled her eyes playfully. "Oh dear, you've been indulging in those peculiar documentaries once more," she remarked, shaking her head and casually popping a grape into her mouth as if nothing had just changed. "What about me?" I found myself laughing as well. Yet it lacked authenticity. It was a laugh that escaped your lips, unfiltered and spontaneous, before your heart could even catch up. As my heart began to quicken, the dialogue shifted, or perhaps they allowed it to. Eric filled the glasses once more with wine. Rachel snatched a blanket and nestled into the couch, her legs folded beneath her, as if she had performed this ritual countless times before. As I washed the dishes, my hands moved with an unfamiliarity, as if they were the hands of another. Yet my thoughts remained ensnared, trapped in the confines of that sentence, captivated by the way he gazed at me as he uttered, "Someone close, person in whom you have confidence." That night I remained silent. Not as long as Rachel was present. Not when we exchanged our goodnights and I nestled into bed beside him. Not even as I lay gazing at the ceiling in the darkness, attuned to his rhythmic breathing beside me, serene and at peace, as if he hadn't just unveiled something I was unprepared to confront. It was only the following evening, after Rachel had stepped out for a stroll and the children were engrossed in their video games, that he revisited the topic. The kitchen was our setting. I found myself diligently wiping down the counter. He lingered behind me, silent, contemplative, excessively silent. "You know I would never cause you any pain," he said. I stood still, caught in a moment of disbelief. That phrase invariably signals that something is on the horizon. And whatever it might be, I sensed it wouldn't bode well. "I truly mean it," he pressed on. "I would never, under any circumstances, take an action that would betray your trust. However, should you be willing, we might find ourselves closer than we have ever been." With deliberate slowness, I pivoted. "Eric, could you clarify what you mean?" Then he uttered it straightforwardly, without a hint of shame or moment's pause. "What if we explored something more open, not just between us, but conceptually?" My heart sank. My body turned icy. He quickly added that he wasn't implying anything needed to occur. "Consider it for a moment. We share a deep bond, the three of us, filled with love for one another. There exists a bond of trust between us. It wouldn't be considered cheating after all. It promises to be an exploration of the unfamiliar, a journey into profound depths." I remained silent. I was unable to. I stood frozen, dish towel clutched in my hand, gazing at the man I believed I understood. This man, who once pressed his lips gently to my forehead before heading off to work, who shed tears of joy at the moment our daughter entered the world, who would softly murmur his love into the nape of my neck when he believed I was lost in slumber. And now he was requesting that I share him with my sister. A wave of nausea washed over me, as if the very ground beneath my feet was subtly shifting, tilting ever so slightly. Yet the most terrifying aspect was not merely his words. In his eyes there was a serene intensity, a clarity of purpose, and an undercurrent of optimism. He truly meant it, every single word. In that moment it dawned on me that this was no mere fantasy for him. This was not merely a jest born of inebriation. This desire had lingered within him for quite some time. At last, he had uttered the words into the air. That night sleep eluded me. I lay there in our bed next to Eric, gazing up at the ceiling, attempting to comprehend the events that had just unfolded. He had requested that I invite my sister into our marriage, into our bed, not as a jest, not casually, but as if it were something exquisite, organic, and reasonable. All that occupied my mind was the realization that he hadn't laid a hand on me in months. No gentle touch on my back as I walked by, no kiss that lingered in the air, not even a glance that conveyed, "You're still beautiful to me." But now he was drawn to something that included both me and her. A boundary I never imagined we'd even approach. That night, I shifted onto my side and gazed at him. His face radiated a serene tranquility, as if he had at last shed the weight of his worries. All I experienced was chaos, a tumultuous, suffocating storm raging within my chest that I could not calm, regardless of how motionless I remained. The images in my mind were relentless, vivid snapshots of Rachel in her tank tops, twirling through the kitchen, her laughter ringing out at Eric's dry humor, as if he were the most hilarious man alive. It came back to me, that moment from last month when we were gathered outside, grilling, and Rachel accidentally knocked over her drink. Eric hurried to fetch a towel, yet it was the tenderness of his touch on her back and the warmth of her smile directed at him that lingered in the air. I reassured myself that it was harmless, yet now uncertainty loomed over me. Had it been unfolding right before my eyes all along? Was I truly blind, or had I merely opted to remain oblivious? I endeavored to engage in logical thought. He approached me first, I reassured myself. He did not engage in any covert actions. He was honest with me all along. He presented me with a decision. Isn't that what individuals often express as their desire in a relationship? Honesty? Yet, another voice within me, one I have hushed countless times, murmured, "What sort of man believes that allowing his wife to be shared with her sister is an expression of love?" I continued to grapple with the logic of it all. Was this a matter of fervor? Was it centered around something new and different? Was it a matter of control? Or was it about something far more sinister that I wasn't prepared to confront? For the following days, I wandered through a haze. I wore a smile when required, prepared the children for their day at school, neatly folded the laundry, and responded to my friends with cheerful emojis and enthusiastic exclamation points. Yet within I was coming apart at the seams. Each sound within the house resonated with an intensity that seemed to magnify the atmosphere. Each moment of quiet carried an air of suspicion, and Rachel, she was simply being herself, laughing heartily at TikToks, engaging in board games with the kids, crafting smoothie bowls in the morning, as if she were blissfully unaware of the impending explosion at the heart of it all. One morning I decided to dip my toes in, all while sipping coffee in a relaxed manner. I asked, "Have you ever pondered the peculiar nature of certain relationships these days? It's fascinating how some individuals become so candid." She blinked, a look of confusion crossing her face. "Are you referring to things related to poly?" "Indeed," I remarked, swirling my cup despite the absence of anything left to mix. "Can you envision yourself in something like that?" She chuckled, nearly sputtering on her toast. "Oh my goodness, absolutely not. I find myself grappling with intense feelings of jealousy. I would completely lose my sanity." Then she inquired, "Why? Did someone make a move on you and Eric?" Her words were light-hearted, yet I found no joy in them, for in that instant a profound truth dawned upon me, one so weighty it felt as though it might shatter me. She was utterly in the dark, completely unaware of Eric's thoughts, oblivious to his desires, and lost in the contemplation of what was now being presented to me. And yet, with each passing day they drew nearer. Unshared laughter, teasing nudges and fleeting touches that hung in the air, leaving me to question the reality of my perceptions. On a particular night, I found myself lingering outside the guest room where Rachel was residing. The door stood slightly ajar. The room was shrouded in darkness, save for the gentle illumination emanating from her television screen. I listened to them, both of them. It seemed that Eric had stepped in to verify something, if I recall correctly. That is what he conveyed to me. Yet I caught the sound of laughter, soft, effortless, and known. Suddenly my name echoed in the air. The sentence eluded my understanding. leaving only its conclusion clear in my mind. Then Rachel let out a giggle, that pure, unfiltered sound I recognized intimately, soon enveloped by silence. It lacked a flirtatious edge, not quite, yet it certainly held some significance. And that's the essence of these moments. They dwell in the shadows, in the delicate transitions, the near misses, the unspoken words. I lingered in that moment, time stretching endlessly, attuned to the sounds around me, holding my breath in hushed anticipation. In that instant, a revelation washed over me, sending a shiver deep within my core. Should I delay my decision any longer, I risk having others decide for me. Following that evening outside Rachel's room, a change stirred within me. I chose not to confront Eric. I remained silent, refraining from outbursts or inquiries. I have recently begun to observe, to take in their presence, to focus on him. Each fleeting moment transformed into proof. Each smile, each touch, every instance Rachel uttered his name with that delightful, playful lilt, reminiscent of the way she once addressed her boyfriends in our youth. And Eric began to transform. He grew increasingly observant. One afternoon he returned home with flowers, lilies my favorite, though it had been nearly 2 years since he last gifted them to me. Throughout the day he reached out to me, not with discussions of errands or bills, but with small, thoughtful compliments. One night, unexpectedly, he entered the bathroom as I was washing my face, wrapped his arms around my waist, and softly whispered, "I miss us." Yet I understood his meaning. He felt my absence deeply. He longed for the version of me that would entertain his peculiar little fantasy. Then arrived the offerings. New earrings, a delicate silk robe, a reservation at that beloved steakhouse from our past. With every expression of gratitude, he would respond with a slow, intentional smile, as if to convey, "Doesn't this feel wonderful?" Then he began to weave in terms such as adventure, trust, and evolution. He remarked that we have been ensnared in a routine for far too long. Shouldn't we embark on new adventures together? In unison, he repeated that word, as though it were a precious gift he was presenting to me, a new chapter in the realm of love. Yet all I could sense was a creeping dread, silently unfurling like mold hidden beneath the floorboards. One day, Eric casually made a suggestion, as if it were nothing of great importance. "How about we embark on a weekend escape?" he remarked during the dinner conversation. "Only we and Rachel. The children may remain with my sister." I blinked. "Are you suggesting that the three of us should go together?" "Indeed." He offered a smile. Ah, the nostalgia of yesteryears. Prior to the overwhelming demands of her job, Rachel certainly deserved a moment of respite. Let us simply relax. Return to the essence of who we are once more. Rachel's face radiated with joy. A weekend by the beach? Absolutely, I would be delighted. I crave the warmth of the sun and the taste of wine, just as I did yesterday. I gazed at the two of them seated before me. So nonchalant, so oblivious, or perhaps not. Perhaps they were both playing a part. Yet I found myself smiling as I replied, yes. The beach house exuded an exquisite charm, almost too exquisite. It was a rental that Eric had discovered, a sleek, glass-paneled modern marvel poised elegantly on the coastline. The sound of waves crashing filtered through the open windows. The air was infused with the essence of salt and the warmth of sunlight. We reached our destination on a Friday, just as the night began to unfold. It was clear to me that I had erred. There was an abundance of wine, an overflow of laughter, and a multitude of moments that seemed just a touch askew. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Eric set up a speaker, and soon we found ourselves dancing barefoot on the patio, lost in the rhythm of the evening. Rachel twirled in her sundress, laughter spilling from her lips as she glowed beneath the orange sky. Eric observed her intently. Gone are the days of nuance. His hand lingered on her waist for a fleeting moment as they brushed past one another. He chuckled excessively at her humor. He lingered in proximity, and in that fleeting moment, I saw him gaze at her with the same intensity he once reserved for me. Rachel appeared oblivious. Perhaps she did, yet she found herself at a loss for interpretation. That weekend she exuded sweetness, her thoughtfulness evident as she repeatedly referred to it as family bonding time. She continued to express how wonderful it felt to be safe and surrounded by those who genuinely cared. All that occupied my mind was the thought that if she were to uncover the truth, forgiveness would be a distant hope for either of us. As Saturday night descended, the atmosphere grew heavy. It was one of those nights when the world appeared perfectly ordinary, yet beneath the facade, an electric tension thrummed just out of sight. We had just concluded our meal, the aroma of grilled seafood lingering in the air, accompanied by a few more bottles of wine. Rachel ascended the stairs to take a shower, while Eric settled beside me on the sofa, our thighs brushing against one another. He gazed at me as if attempting to decipher the thoughts swirling within my mind. "I understand that this may seem daunting," he murmured gently, "but it doesn't need to be. This might draw us nearer than we have ever been. Just one night, just one time for us. For the bond we've always desired." I found myself at a loss for words. My chest felt as if it were splitting apart. I gazed at him, truly gazed, and beheld a stranger, a man transformed, serene amidst the chaos, a man who held steadfast to his convictions. What could possibly be worse? Somewhere deep within me, there existed a part that yearned to trust him as well, to trust that this would bridge the emptiness that lay between us, to trust that this would ultimately render me sufficient. I can't quite explain what overtook me. Perhaps it was the wine. Perhaps it was the fear. Perhaps it was the distorted hope that if I surrendered, I could dictate what followed. But I nodded just once, softly, subtly, and everything that came after turned into a haze I can never wipe away. That night was still, almost eerily so. After I nodded, there was a moment of stillness. Eric remained unmoved, not leaping into action. He simply remained beside me, a smile gracing his lips, almost tender in its warmth. He reached for my hand, pressed his lips to it, and murmured, "Trust me." And in that moment, I found myself compelled to follow. Rachel descended from her room a short while later, her hair still damp from the shower, clad in one of Eric's oversized sweatshirts and pajama shorts. She resembled the little sister I once braided hair for, tucked in and shielded from nightmares. She appeared youthful, while I sensed the weight of age. We found ourselves nestled on the couch, the wine continuing to flow, the warmth of the fireplace enveloping the room. And Eric said it just like that. He said we should try letting go of traditional boundaries. Together, Rachel blinked. Her expression shifted, a blend of bewilderment and incredulity. "What?" She laughed, yet it was a nervous sort of laughter, the kind that ascends too swiftly and too sharply. "You must be joking, right?" Eric regarded her with a calm, steady gaze. "No," he said. "We have faith in you. We love you. You trust us. It doesn't need to be strange, just something beautiful." Rachel turned to me, her eyes wide, almost pleading. "Wait, are you two okay with this? Are you certain?" I remained silent. I was unable to. The words lingered in a liminal space, caught between my ribs and my throat. So Eric spoke for us both. "We are certain," he stated. "This is about connection. We desire a deeper connection. All of us." And then, everything began to shift. I didn't intervene. I remained silent. I merely observed it as it unfolded, as if I were detached from my own existence, as if I floated above the scene, a quiet observer of my own disintegration. Rachel reclined, her mind swirling with uncertainty, caught in the web of her thoughts. Eric approached her deliberately, and I remained motionless, not from comfort, not from agreement, but from a state of numbness. It resembled the sight of a car gliding toward the precipice, with no one intervening to halt its descent. But then, just as the moment teetered on the brink of something significant, before that ultimate boundary was breached, Rachel recoiled, swift as a whisper. In an instant, her expression transformed, her entire form tensed. She rose to her feet, shaking her head. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "This isn't right," she remarked. "I can't do this. This is absolutely insane. What are we doing?" She looked at me, truly looked, and in her eyes I witnessed something shatter. Then she turned and dashed upstairs, raced into the guest's bathroom, and secured the door behind her. I did not pursue her. Eric didn't either. We simply remained there, enveloped by this silence. The sort of silence that seems to pulse with life. Heavy, loud, filled with everything we couldn't say. Eric stood up slowly, ran a hand through his hair, and muttered, "She'll be okay. It's just overwhelming all at once." As if that somehow improved the situation. It was as if that had wiped away everything that had just transpired. But what about me? I remained motionless on that couch in the beach house, the fire crackling softly beside me, a glass of untouched wine cradled in my hand. All I could think was, what had I just allowed to unfold? Rachel remained inside that night. We caught a glimpse of her sorrow, a soft cry escaping through the door, and that was the last time. The very last time she ever met my gaze. I lost her that night, not due to the events that unfolded, but rather the near miss. Because I failed to intervene. Because I failed to safeguard her as well as myself. Because I allowed silence to convey my thoughts. And in that silence, everything was revealed. Rachel had vanished by dawn. No goodbyes. No confrontation. No note. Gone just like that. I heard the front door click shut around 6 a.m. I leaned closer to the window, catching a glimpse of her as she flung her duffel bag into the back seat of her car. She didn't spare a glance back at the house. We didn't check if we were being observed. We simply didn't care. To be truthful, I wouldn't have done so either. Eric remained in slumber as she quietly departed, or at least feigning it. I perched on the edge of the bed, my gaze fixed on the floor for what seemed like an eternity. The carpet underfoot was an indulgent softness. The atmosphere in the room was stifling. Everything seemed amiss. And when Eric finally opened his eyes, he yawned as if it were just another ordinary morning. As if nothing had transpired. As if we hadn't fractured something hallowed just hours earlier. He sat up, stretched, and offered me a smile. And then he uttered it, that sentence that continues to twist my stomach whenever it crosses my mind. "You showed great courage last night," he murmured. "We are more resilient now." Resilient. I felt like a shard of glass fractured down the middle. Still intact in a sense, yet so close to breaking apart with just a single touch. The journey back from the beach house was serene. Eric navigated the road with one hand on the wheel, sunglasses perched on his nose, softly humming along to the tunes on the radio. I gazed out the window for what felt like an eternity, clutching the hem of my sweater until my knuckles were drained of color. I found myself at a loss for words when it came to him. I was equally uncertain when it came to conversing with my own thoughts. Back home, everything felt so ordinary. The kids rushed to greet us as we stepped inside, eagerly inquiring if we had brought them shells or goodies, sharing tales of their weekend spent at Aunt Linda's. I smiled. I embraced them. I feigned. Yet, deep within, something was crumbling. Every step I took in that house felt like traversing a landscape of shattered glass. Rachel's door stood ajar, a void within. Her bed lay perfectly arranged. Her toothbrush was missing. There was no trace of her shampoo scent. There are no scattered bracelets on the bathroom sink. A mere void carved from existence. That night, sleep eluded me. I was haunted by her face. The precise moment she rose, tears glistening in her eyes, shaking her head. The way she uttered those words, "This isn't right," echoed with a sense of finality. I can't do this. This is utterly absurd. And my silence. My complete, unforgivable silence. The dream would replay again and again, me watching her run. Me frozen on that couch. I remain still. Silence prevails. Not saving her. And then her eyes, those big, trusting eyes, looking at me as if I were no longer her sister. In that instant, I found myself absent. Eric returned to work the following day as if nothing had shifted. He kissed me on the cheek before he left, calling over his shoulder, "Let's do something just the two of us this weekend. You are worthy of it." And I found myself in the kitchen, still clad in my pajamas, staring at the toaster as if it held the answers to questions I couldn't even voice. The children were the first to notice. At dinner, my youngest inquired, "Where's Aunt Rachel?" I froze. My fork hovered midway to my mouth. Eric remained unfazed. He continued to eat as if he hadn't heard a word. I managed a smile, fragile and empty, and said, "She's just taking some space. She needed time." My daughter tilted her head. "Is she mad at us?" "No, darling, I was not truthful. She simply requires some time alone." But deep down, I understood the reality. She had to be far away from me. Time slipped by, yet it felt as though it stood still. They resonated like distant echoes. It felt as though I was trapped in a cycle of the same hollow, relentless rhythm, repeating endlessly. I made an attempt to reach out to Rachel through a text message, only this once. I apologize. Please give me a call. Just tell me you're okay. But she remained silent. And deep down, I knew she wouldn't. Because how do you respond to someone who stood by and watched you fall, doing nothing to catch you? The worst part? It wasn't the stillness. It wasn't merely the guilt. It was the realization that, for just a fleeting moment, I entertained the thought. I pushed that door open, and in that moment, I lost more than just my sister. I lost a part of myself I might never get back. I began to journal once more, not because I believed it would mend anything, but because I found no other place to bear the burden. The weight, the embarrassment, the noise inside my head. The first sentence I wrote. I gazed at it for what felt like an eternity before the pen finally began to dance across the page. It was more than merely his desire. And the second line emerged as if it were a confession. I didn't know I was carrying. A piece of me desired it as well, not the deed, not the precise item he requested, but the focus, the notion of being sought after, desired, acknowledged. After years of being unseen, overlooked, and taken for granted, there was an allure in the idea of being noticed once more, even if that attention originated from a misguided source, even if it were tainted from the very beginning. And then I penned a question I still find unanswered. Did I say yes to draw nearer to my husband or merely to feel something, anything at all? Because that's the aspect no one reveals about emotional starvation. It doesn't always guide you to another. Sometimes it guides you to your own essence, the most shadowy, solitary version of yourself. The individual who consents to matters you vowed you would never entertain. The individual who allows silence to articulate her thoughts. The individual who forsakes her own essence merely to avoid fading away. That night has been playing on a loop in my mind, not merely the apparent instant, not merely Rachel's tears, not solely the stillness that ensued, but everything that came before. The way Eric's gaze lingered on her when she laughed. The way I kept glancing between them felt as if I were an outsider in my own marriage. The way I allowed it to unfold. Because a fragment of my heart believed, perhaps, just perhaps, if I acquiesced, he might love me once more. Not out of desire, not possession. Affection. Genuine, unwavering, tender-hearted affection. Yet, I found myself mistaken. Because whatever we once shared, it's vanished now. Reduced to ashes, embers and stillness and messages left unread. I attempted to reach Rachel once more last night. It rang 4 times before it was directed to voicemail. I chose not to leave a message. What could I possibly express? I'm sorry I remained motionless when I ought to have shielded you. I apologize for allowing my solitude to cloud my judgment. I think of you daily, and my self-loathing surpasses anything you might feel. No message could reverse the events that transpired. And silence. Silence is what I deserve now. Eric pretends that everything is okay between us, better even. He holds my hand sometimes now. Brings home takeout. He kisses me on the forehead before he heads off to work. This morning he kissed my cheek. It felt light and casual, yet somehow significant, and I stood in the doorway watching his car pull out of the driveway, pondering the true nature of this man. The one who spoke of love while urging me to open a door I should have firmly closed. The one who deemed me brave for presenting myself as a gift, when in truth I was shattering. And then I whispered something I hadn't allowed myself to voice until that very moment. I'm uncertain if I'll ever find love for him again, I murmured softly. Perhaps if I whispered it, it wouldn't sting quite as deeply. But it did. And then the second part followed, the section one had been evading. The moment that struck harder than anything else. And even more dire. I find myself questioning whether forgiveness is even possible, for the harm extends beyond the external. It resides within me. And some fractures, they remain unhealed. They simply coexist with you. Have you ever experienced a profound sense of invisibility, an overwhelming feeling of being unloved, so utterly overlooked in your own existence that you found yourself agreeing to something you instinctively knew was misguided? I find myself pondering that question daily. Was I selfish or merely broken? Because it's simple to cast blame from a distance, to declare what ought to have transpired, to assert what actions you would have taken. But in the midst of that silence, in that echo chamber of being overlooked, dismissed, and yearning for connection, your judgment begins to warp. You find yourself making choices that no longer reflect who you truly are. You justify. You find yourself murmuring to your own thoughts. It's just this once, or perhaps it could mend what's broken. And by the moment you grasp the cost, it's already beyond your reach. If you've ever stood in such a space, if you've ever yearned for something that defied logic, something that slowly eroded your essence while luring you with the promise of fulfillment, then perhaps you can relate. And if you choose not to, I wish for you that you never find yourself in that position. If you possess any advice or a tale of your own, or perhaps even a touch of kindness, I invite you to share it in the comments. It's not solely for my benefit. For those observing this moment, teetering on the brink of a choice that cannot be undone. And I urge you, do not cast judgment on Rachel. She was unaware. She entered a home that appeared to embody love from the outside, blissfully unaware of the decay lurking beneath the surface. She was innocent, and I hold no blame against her. Not anymore. I attribute it to the silence, the unspoken truths, the fragment of my being that shattered and allowed it all to unfold. If this narrative resonated with you, if it made you feel acknowledged, even in the slightest manner, I encourage you to subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. In this place, authenticity reigns supreme. We share the authentic narratives, the inhabitants of the gray where the lines of right and wrong fade, and the heart often strays from the path of rules. Loneliness speaks in more than mere whispers. It roars. And sometimes we respond, not due to our conviction in the agreement, but rather from a profound desperation to receive any semblance of resonance in return, yearning for recognition, confined, selected. But here's what I've learned, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Be careful what you agree to in silence. Because sometimes the things we agree to, they don't merely linger in our minds, they transform us. And no apology can restore us to who we once were.